We made this. Hello and welcome to this special episode of Right in the Childhood to celebrate our 1 year anniversary of doing podcasts on kids telly that we both remember from our different childhoods. This is Mark. Fraser is somewhere in America. So what we're doing is we're doing some special episodes where we basically let you have access to the Patreon episodes we recorded about a year ago. Both of the episodes we're sharing with you are revisits. The first one, which you're getting today, is the tripods, and the next one is recess. We themed it along the idea of we both brought one of our favourite programmes ever as the first episode, and we only looked at a couple of episodes, and we both loved those programmes so much that we thought we would tell you what we think after we binge watched them. Now, I binge watched the tripods and Fraser did not. Fraser binge watched Recess and I did not. So it's kind of an odd little thing where one of us has seen the whole thing and the other one is kind of just the sidekick. But I think they're cute little episodes, and the Patreon thing never really worked for us. We didn't get enough Patreons for it to make any sense to carry on doing it. And these episodes have just sat there in the ether, not being broadcast, not being listened to, not being accessible. So what better time than during our month-long 1 year anniversary celebrations to bring these to you. So please do enjoy this first of 2 episodes where we do a little revisit. And this one is the tripods. Hello and welcome to this special Patreon-only episode of Right in the Childhood.
Ooh, so exclusive.
So what we do is we completely ignore the usual format of the show and we give you something else inspired by the usual show.
Yeah, something a little bit extra, just a little bit extra bit on the side there.
Last time we went super deep about what we wanted to be when we grew up, and I admitted that I had a fucking mental breakdown and shit like that. So we're not doing anything quite as heavy this time. No, what we
that's
thought...
what we want to hear.
No, I'm not sure it is. I went a bit
so
far.
I rewatched this programme.
Yeah, so for the next 2 episodes, we are going to take a look back at our first 2 episodes of the podcast itself. So I've done a big, fat, dirty, deep dive onto all of the tripods, and I've watched it all. I binged it, and you did the same with Recess.
Yeah, we're taking it a bit further. We're adding the guacamole.
Yeah. So this month we're going to have a look at the tripods. And Fraser, I know you
did not rewatch any more of this.
I know.
So I will be here for witty banter.
You're just my sidekick, basically.
And yes, and little tangents, maybe.
You didn't enjoy it, did you?
I think it's safe to say no, yes. As much as it hurts me to say. But I'm glad you did, and you've got the enthusiasm and the passion for it enough to have rewatched it all and even make notes about it, which is more... I was going to say it's more than I can say about Recess. I did rewatch all of Recess, and I was like, oh, I'm going to talk about that, I'm going to talk about that. Did I remember to write notes down? Of course I didn't. So
you never make notes.
No.
That's the fundamental difference between you and me. You've got a good memory and I haven't.
Oh, I don't know about that. I remember halfway through I'm talking about something else, and then I go on to that and I'm like, oh no, I didn't finish what I was saying about that, and then it just becomes a hot mess of everything. But hopefully it all goes in people's...
Is this how you describe yourself, a hot mess of everything?
That might be my new Instagram bio from after this episode. Hot mess of everything.
So
Sort of actor, almost kind of journalist.
you do a lot of things, but so do I. Or at least we would if there wasn't
Hot mess
like
of
a broken world.
Hot mess of everything in a hot mess of a world.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Imagine-
But and no COVID on this episode.
No.
No, we're not doing that.
That
We're
wasn't-
talking about the tripods. I love the tripods, Fraser.
I know. I do love those trios of tripod. Those trios of camera equipments. Yeah, I remember my initial pitch. And I still want to see that initial pitch.
So, there are two characters, major characters, that you never encountered from the 2 episodes that we watched.
Yeah. I mean, I could have accounted them and I would have still forgotten.
Yeah, you missed out on Beanpole and Fritz.
Oh, devastated. The crisps.
No. Fritz was a German character and Beanpole was a French character. Beanpole was how they misheard the name Jean-Paul when they got to France. And because he was tall...
I remember they went to France.
Yeah, and because he was tall, it stuck because Beanpole was 80s kids in it.
Nickname. That's a cute nickname.
Beanpole. But,
Did you have a nickname when you were growing up?
I really, really didn't. And I was always a little bit disappointed. No nicknames.
No.
A lot of people called me rude names, but I never had like a cute
Really?
nickname.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say.
Did you have a cute nickname?
I'm trying to think. Oh, okay. I don't know how appropriate this is. So,
Yeah, it's the Patreon episode. Fuck
Yeah,
cunt
that's
arse. We can say, mind you, we swear on the normal ones. What are we talking about?
so I had this mate in high school, and he was from Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm.
But it was have you seen Mean Girls?
Yes.
So you know, like how she comes from I think Zimbabwe as well, and they go, but you're white. But so he was white as well. So we instantly became friends because I went, oh my goodness, you're just like Candy or whatever her name is from Mean Girls. So I used to call him that or Zimbabwe, and he used to call me Leprechaun because I was small.
Leprechaun.
Yeah. I didn't know how appropriate it was. Like, I was like, is that cultural appropriation? I'm not actually... I'm a half...
I was going to say, aren't you like
my
half Irish or
grandparents,
something?
my grandparents are Irish, but then also like me just straight up calling him Zimbabwe was a bit weird.
Quarter Irish.
Yeah. I used to just go Zimbabwe. He used to go Leprechaun. I used to go Zimbabwe.
Was there not like a racial stereotype you could have used from Zimbabwe?
No, I did call him the girl from Mean Girls. I think her name's Candy.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, hey, Mean Girls or Mean Guy.
Did you like Leprechaun?
I didn't mind it too fair. There was a lot of nicknames I had actually, all based around being small. Oh, Smurf was one.
Lovely.
Because our uniform was blue and I was small.
Wow.
I was all kinds. Because there's various different Smurfs. I was a different Smurf depending on the day.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of them were just like short jokes. No one ever called me like Peter Pan or Spider-Man. I got Spider-Man like later on in life.
I remember when I first met you, people called you Fraser. And
Fraser?
yeah, and nobody called you Fraser. So I called you Fraser. It was only like a couple of years into knowing you that I was like, is your name Fraser? And you were like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you weren't confident enough to tell a gigantic friendship group that they mispronounced your name.
I'm never that fussed as well. And like every time I go to America as well, they'll go Fraser. Like all the kids will be like, "Hey Fraser," and then it just like, and it annoys the British stuff because his name's Fraser actually, and I don't know, whatever you want to call me as long as it's not too offensive. To be honest,
Still to this day, people that we've met.
Yeah.
Through the same friendship group of wrestling where we met.
Yeah.
People still call you Fraser.
Are you and Fraser still doing that for you?
Yeah, and I'm like, Fraser? Is it Fraser? And it's like, because...
People get more annoyed than me, it's hilarious.
Well, you just weren't confident enough to correct people. Someone mispronounced my name, someone misspells my name, it drives me crazy.
How do they misspell? How do they put like...
Mark with a C or Adams with 2 Ds.
Like the Addams Family.
Yeah.
Da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. My brother had one, and I'm surprised. I went to an all-boys school, and I'm surprised this didn't pick up. But my last name is Summers, and my brother used to get Bummers.
Right.
And then like...
That's...
It's not too
clever.
But also, I went to an all-boys school, so I thought that would have been one as well, but it never was, thankfully. I'm trying to think if there's any other really nice ones. My mum calls me Fraz. And she also calls me Dennis like Dennis from Dennis the Menace. And then some of my mates heard that she called me Fraz, so then they started calling me Fraz, and I was like, that's cool. And then it's really weird when
I don't want to call you Fraz.
Some people have called me Fraz, and I was like, oh, that's really weird. My mum calls me that, but hey, that's okay.
I'm not going to call you that.
I did have, so when I was working at a primary school when I was like 16 or something. Yeah, when I was 16, I just came out of high school and I was working at this primary school. I was working with this special needs boy. He had Down syndrome and all these behavioural things, but he was such a, like, we got on so well.
Yeah.
And his name was Jack. And he used to call me Alvin, and like all the teachers were like, why do you call me Alvin? I went, I don't know, but it makes him happy or whatever. Realised it's Alvin and the bloody Chipmunks, isn't it? And I was like, that's so great. Cheers, thanks. But it's gone from Smurf, Leprechaun, Alvin to Spider-Man and Peter Pan.
Yeah, well, there's nothing you can really do with Mark, and there was people would like. I'd covered this on the last episode. People would do as I walked down the corridors because of Adams, yeah. But I didn't really have a nickname, and certainly not one that was affectionate like Beanpole.
Did you not have like a definitive height or anything at that point? Were you a tall child, or did you get taller afterwards? Because you're quite tall now.
I was slightly above average height most of the time.
Yeah.
So not really noticeable.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we go back to talking about the tripods?
Yeah.
So
that was my...
Stop distracting me. Tripods episode. So there were 2 series, as we know, and...
Oh, Beanpole works as well for that, because tripods have poles and...
No, okay. And the first series ended quite nicely, and it could have ended there as a inspirational...
Are you saying that the tripods had legs?
Kill me. So the first series ended on this real high note where they got to the White Mountains and they were part of this community that were working to usurp the tripods. It could have ended quite nicely there.
Yeah.
The second series ended on the most brutal fucking cliffhanger in all of televisual history.
Was it a mountain hanger? It was that big.
Yeah, on a fucking mountain hanger. And it was never resolved because it didn't get enough viewers and they cancelled it.
There's got to be some fan fiction out there that people have written their own.
Well, it is based on a trilogy of books, so the book was out there. But also what they did on the DVD, that I do want to talk about because it's really quite creative considering, is that they basically put Series 3 on the DVD in the only way they could.
Cool.
They put the soundtrack of what would have been for Series 3.
Yeah.
And they gave you quite a detailed synopsis in a booklet. And they suggested that you put on the soundtrack and you read the booklet.
That's cool. I do like doing that with like books, or when I say books, I mainly mean comic books. But like, you put on an appropriate soundtrack to go with it. That's a good experience. And I imagine if this was like now, they would have done like maybe an audio book. Because Audible are good at that, aren't they? They put some special effect, like sounds in, and you're like, oh, I'm fully immersed in this world, and then the voice actors are incredible as well. And yeah, or like even those thingy comics, like what are they called? Not digital comics.
Oh, you mean
motion comics?
Motion comics. I love motion comics. They seem to be out of fashion now, though.
They always seem to dip in and out, don't they? Like, I think it depends on what the
motion comics take from the original electronic comic, though, so they couldn't have done a motion comic with this. I feel like, as solution goes for a DVD that's now about 15 years old, this was not only creative but quite immersive.
I wonder if anyone's done like a reading of it for like maybe on like YouTube or something, or like if there's an audience for it on Audible. Like literally, you can use the same soundtrack music, just have someone read the booklet.
I mean, I could do it if I could be arsed.
This is BBC, right?
Yeah. I could do that.
Suggest it to the BBC. Send it their way.
Well, I could just stick it on Patreon.
Ooh, that sounds really good.
Well, why not?
Even more exclusive stuff.
What are you on? So
I'm on Right in the Childhood.
Yeah, quite.
Patreon exclusive with Mark Adams and Fraser Summit.
One of your criticisms was the lack of tripods. And that absolutely
Yes.
continued. There was very little tripods. In fact, by the time they got to the city in Series 2, the tripods you discover are populated with three-legged aliens. So there's lots of the three-legged aliens in the city,
Yeah.
but the tripods themselves, the actual tripods, are missing for like 6 or 8 episodes of the second series.
Love that.
Yeah.
No, to be fair, it was probably like a practical solution to like a financial problem. But when you call your show The Tripods, I guess you kind of want to see it.
Yeah. So something that you also criticised was that the special effects look dated. But what you've got to remember is for 1984, these special effects were about as ambitious as they possibly could be. The problem with that is they stretched it even further in the second series. And the Masters, as they were called, the race that kind of were the tripod drivers, they were ropey. They were ropey.
Okay.
It was so ambitious, and at the time it was revolutionary and considered the cutting edge. But watching it back, again, particularly Series 2, it is tough to suspend your disbelief. It is tough. I still enjoyed the plot, I still enjoyed the story, and I still enjoyed the nostalgia.
Yeah.
But if I'm being brutally honest, it
was tough.
is dated.
Do you think with aliens and stuff like that, and like species that you're going for, are you better going for more humanistic looking ones, like in Doctor Who and stuff like that, like the Cybermen and stuff like that? They're all suits and stuff like that, or like the Daleks are like figures, or like on your other podcast you talk about like Red Dwarf. They seem to go for more like human aliens, but with slight differences. Like Star Trek will do the same. Like they'll do simple makeup, so it's like it becomes less dated. Then whereas like if you rely on special effects, you run the risk of it not looking as good.
I'm a massive fan of practical effects, and I always have been, because I'm a huge horror nerd.
Yeah.
And my other podcast is on B-movies, and without a doubt, horror movies benefit from practical effects.
Yeah.
The moment you stick in too much CG, I'm like, fuck off.
Bad, yeah.
Perfect example is the blood, guts and gore in a film called Shocker, which was Wes Craven film. That was great. And then randomly, they had CG water. And do you know what looks better than CG water?
Water.
Yes, exactly
it's
right.
well affordable. Even I can afford water.
Yeah, it was a weird choice. And that was in a film that had really good practical effects as well. I was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Were they filming in LA during the water shortage or something?
Maybe. But no, so stuff like that does stick out to me. And in a similar way, the CG that they used was like no one had seen this shit in 1985. But it doesn't hold up now in the tripods, unfortunately.
It's one of them, the biggest example would be like the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. They're
so good.
I love that. Have you seen the picture where there's a picture of like Steven Spielberg and one of them like that's dead and goes, look at this terrible
Triceratops.
this terrible hunter or whatever.
Yeah, that meme. You and bloody memes.
Hilarious.
But it does feel like Series 1 and Series 2 were two very distinctive plot lines, two very distinctive story arcs, and almost two very distinctive programs. Because the first one is about this threat of these unknown, mysterious metal monsters. And the second one is like, lol, that's what happened, that's what's in there. All the mystery's gone. Now we're talking about a city full of these weird-ass aliens.
Yeah, so they just wanted to... they changed the whole concept of the show, basically.
It felt like it. And both series did feel like could have done with a bit of a condensed to 10 episodes.
Do they feel like two different series in a way? Or is there still a bit connected?
They cut out Beanpole. Beanpole was in maybe 3 or 4 episodes of Series 2. And Henry was in 1. And they were both replaced with Fritz. So again, it felt completely different. Series 3 would have had all 4 characters in all the majority of the episodes, and that was kind of like Series 1 and Series 2 would have met into Series 3.
So it would have made sense, but obviously because that didn't happen.
Yeah, and you'd got so close to the Henry and the Beanpole characters that for them to be ripped out of the show and replaced with this quite abrasive character in Fritz, who softens as he goes along, but you were basically losing two of the most likeable characters and having it replaced with this character that it took a long time to like.
Yeah.
Whereas Henry, he wasn't particularly likeable in the first episode, but you very quickly got to understand him and like him by like episode 2, episode 3 of Series 1. But they were gone. And again, if we'd had the real payoff, that would have mattered less.
Yeah, definitely. Were they, obviously, like with a French character and German character, did they cast French and German actors, do you know? And
no, they did not. They were all British.
Was it, because was it obvious? Was it a bit like, oh, they're putting on an accent and it's a bit ropey?
Yeah, Beanpole sounded like he was from Yorkshire because the actor who played him was from Yorkshire. And the guy playing Fritz put on a mild, stereotypical German accent.
Did they have him speak their language at all?
Never.
No.
Right. So
they're only down that, like, come on, you could have got a French kid or a German kid to come to England for a bit, surely.
Maybe, yeah.
You're the BBC.
Yeah, it's true. But I do feel like I've been really critical here, but I loved it.
Yeah.
And one thing I must mention is that in Series 2 was the insane camp outfits. Now, I'm going to very quickly pause and show you
excited.
These outfits, Fraser.
Don't you worry, Patreon listeners, you will be able to see these outfits, I'm sure.
Yeah.
One way or another. Oh my god.
Relax, don't do it when you want. Mate, they are so
Have you seen Billy Elliot?
Yes.
He looks like Billy's friend.
Billy Elliot is homoerotic as well. It was so homoerotic. Wow. And there's a documentary on the DVD, and the guy who did the designs was like, at the time we didn't think anything of it, but looking back, yeah, you're right. So there was no intent. Wow. There was no intent to make it camp as shit. But they had these outfits that just made them look so camp. So Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Camp as Christmas, is that?
Yeah, and you know, it even went to the point where a lot of the characters had 80s gay man tashes. It was definitely a thing.
That's never a good look, is it, to be honest?
And on this same documentary, they didn't manage to get the guy who played Will, because he is very much a kind of, he's moved on, he's a businessman, and he's not really very interested in the fandom. But what they did get was, they got quite in-depth interviews with Jim Baker, who played Henry.
Yeah.
And he just seems like such a nice, pragmatic guy. He didn't get much acting work afterwards, so he drives a truck. And he's completely kind of open about it, and he's so pleased that he got to be part of something that's so culty. And I'm following him on Twitter, and he's got only got about 200 followers, 300 followers.
Bless him.
And he just seems like a nice fella.
Let's get him to 300.
Yeah, well, he just seems like such a nice fella that is so pleased that he got to do a cool thing that is in history for the rest, in television history for the rest of time. And it is a culty, well-loved show. And I do feel like that has helped our podcast a little bit, in as much that there's a lot of specialised fans and websites and Twitter people that have engaged with us and retweeted us. And it kind of helped with the start of our show. We got more listens than we ever expected to, because we covered the tripods.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's a very culty, friendly fandom. There's like fanzines out there on it, and there's a website called the Sile Press, which is run by the family of the writer of the original trilogy of books.
Yeah.
And that's very active, and they've retweeted us, and it's all been very nice. And yeah, I felt almost like a part of a fandom, which was really, really nice. And we just did one 45-minute episode on the thing. You know?
Yeah, it's nice.
Oh, and I also discovered who's got the film rights.
Ooh.
Would you like to hazard a guess?
Disney.
It is Disney.
No.
So if we see the tripods again,
It could be.
it will be made by Disney. It could be a Disney Plus limited series. Who knows? They've had the license for quite a while though, and they've not done anything with it.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't that be a nice thing? Your big Disney thing and my big tripods thing working together in perfect harmony like we do on Right in the Childhood.
Of course, that'd be very fitting.
So that's a revisit of the tripods. I've had such a nice time talking about it again. And you clearly haven't.
No, I've enjoyed it, to be fair. It reminded me of stuff from it, like the plot, the characters.
Would you watch the Disney remake? Would you give it a chance?
Probably not, no.
You wouldn't?
No.
Even if I asked you nicely?
Oh, well.
And bought you vegan food?
That's a different board game altogether, asking me nicely.
Bought you vegan food and we had a sit and a chill and maybe might even like share my quilt with you and we'd have a sit and a binge in one afternoon.
You had me nicely. The food was the cherry on top, and then I stopped listening.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being our lovely, lovely Patreons. He's been Fraser, I've been Mark.
And this has been the guacamole on the side. Because it's the extra.
Yeah, what he said, I think.
The podcast is the burrito, this is the guacamole.
Bye.
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you just listened to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling. Elsewhere on We Made This. Frame to frame.
Being John Malkovich, I think, is probably the most original film I will ever see, because I had absolutely no idea what was going to come next. Then when it did come, I was like, okay, right, that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense being a loaded term in the context of this film.
Well, yeah. In any other film, it'd be ridiculous. Like, oh, what, we're suddenly going through John Malkovich's subconscious whilst one person's trying to shoot another. Like, it's ridiculous, but it makes sense within the context of the film. I pretty much agree with everything that you were saying about it being the exploitation of celebrity. That was my sort of big takeaway. And the thing I was thinking, oh yes, I'll be able to say this on the podcast and it will sound smart, was that they get their 15 minutes of fame. But
sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the beauty of us not talking about ahead of time, right?
Yeah, is it?
Pick a disc.
Was that kind of your entry into music as well? So did you learn a lot about music because of what your parents' record collection was then? Or?
Oh, of course. They were the first DJs in my life. I mean, you know, what they listened to was gospel to me. And then I started learning my own music through listening to albums on the radio, listening to stuff that my friends would dub a cassette copy. Oh, you got to hear this album. And they would dub a couple songs and make mixtapes. And then passing mixtapes around between friends to kind of introduce each other to new bands. But the bands that I listened to in my youngest years, in my childhood, are the ones that I still look back at with just some, because they helped really shape and form who I am as a music fan.
Rarely Going, an animated Star Trek podcast.
They've gone through that script and went, yep, that's fine. And that's been approved by, you know, the executive producers, the writing room. There's a lot of people that have had to go through this episode before it's got to air. And, you know, the fact that they can have something like that where it can be a little bit self-critical of the thing is good. You know, Star Trek can often be classed as taking itself a little bit too seriously. And I think something like that, you know, the fact that people go, yeah, you know what, that's fair point. And they're probably, you know, people are aware of the criticism, the positive things. You know, people are basing Star Trek around a lot of some of these decisions and leaning into that. So I think that, you know, it shows that the writers are self-aware, certainly. And, you know, that also extends out with the lower decks kind of writing room too.
Yeah, fair.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.